Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. In our last session, we completed the third mantra from the first chapter. So now we can study the fourth mantra, the fourth verse. And this contains a comprehensive list of entities that the meditators came across while exploring their human existence. The verse itself just gives the numbers, but what is meant, that has not been explained in the text itself, most likely because these categories were well known to practitioners of meditation back then in 300 BC, and that's why the author of this text did not find it necessary to list them separately, so he just gives the numbers, that's all. And what is meant, that primarily has to be taken from Sankhya philosophy. The Sankhya philosophical system, which according to modern historians originated at around 900 or 1000 BC, is an extremely ancient philosophical system and very influential, as I have been pointing out again and again, that even the Buddha, the meditation master of the Buddha, was a Sankhya teacher. Buddha himself was born in a city. He was a prince of the city, not born, but he was the prince of that city, Kapilavastu, which is thought to have been founded by disciples of Kapila, the founder of Sankhya philosophy. This text, the Upanishad, this Shvetashvatara-Upanishad, is the first Upanishad out of the 11, the last one, which pays respect by mentioning the name of Kapila, the founder of the Sankhya philosophical system. Sage Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are completely structured in the Sankhya philosophical system. Now the problem is that we don't have any work available from Sage Kapila or any one of his immediate followers. The first Sankhya work that is available to us is from approximately the 2nd or 3rd century, or even maybe 4th century, which is also the first Vedic work to have been translated into a foreign language, into Chinese, in the 5th century. Already, I think, in the just 100 years after it was originally composed in India, it was translated into Chinese and then was taken to China. The name is Sankhya Karika. I don't know what's the Chinese name. In history, I read clearly that's why we are so certain about the date of this work, because in the 5th century it was translated into Chinese. And when I was working with a translator of the Yoga Sutras into Chinese language, Mr. Shi Hong from Swami Ram Sadagram, who has produced a Chinese translation of the Yoga Sutras, he told me that he has seen this work, Sankhya Karika, in Chinese language, translated in the 5th century into Chinese. So it is based on that work and its commentaries that we have to give faces to these numbers. That is what I will be doing as part of my explanation today. Most of what I will be explaining has been taken from that work of Sankhya. All these numbers according to what has been explained there. Okay. And since Sankhya in itself means meditation, and Sankhya means the wisdom that arises out of meditation, meditative wisdom. Basically what Ishvara Krishna is describing in Sankhya Karika, and what was originally described by Sage Kapila in his teachings, and that's why it is mentioned here around 600, 700 years before Ishvara Krishna here, is because these were used as objects of meditation, reflection, contemplation within oneself. Some of them, many of them, so that many of them are even pitfalls which have to be avoided by a practitioner of yoga. So let's first pronounce the mantra as we do, and then we will study it. Tam eka nemim trivritam shodashantam shatardharam vimshati pratyarabhihi ashtakaihi shadbhir vishva rupaika pasham trimarga bhedam dvi nimittaika moham tameka nemim trivritam shodashantam shatardharam vimshati pratyarabhihi ashtakaihi shadbhir vishwarupaikapasham trimargabhedam dvinimittaikamoham. We know it as a wheel with one valley, 3 tires, 16 ends, 50 spokes, 20 counter spokes, and 6 sets of 8s, whose single rope is of many forms, which has 3 distinct parts, 2 of which arise from a single delusion. That's the literal translation of the Sanskrit. The future notes will contain the entire list. I'm still working on these notes, and as I more understand it myself, because as we will see while explaining this verse itself, the deepest understanding comes when you teach something yourself. And this is what also in these 50 spokes, one of the spokes is this, that proper understanding comes when you start teaching it to someone else. That's also one spoke. So And sometimes the commentaries are very confusing, even the Sanskrit commentaries. When my teachers taught me, we just had to study through, that's all. And the commentaries are confusing is first of all because these works, they are extremely ancient works. They have different readings, different versions sometimes. That becomes confusing. And then depending on the background of the commentator, the Tantra commentators, for example, the Agama commentators, because again, as I keep on pointing out, that the Shvetashvatara-Upanishad is tremendously influential also on the Tantra practices. They keep on quoting. So there was also a tendency of masters coming from the Tantra background to explain Shvetashvatara-Upanishad in a Tantra philosophy. And then it becomes sometimes very confusing. So, but with one's own practice, with proper contemplation, reflection, when one relates different commentaries to one's own practice, what feels most meaningful to oneself, that is when your own understanding becomes more refined. So that is what I try to do, as I will explain. So first of all, we know it. What is this it? It's not the energy, Shakti, that he spoke about in the previous verse, but it is the radiant one. The radiant one, of which that Shakti is the very self about which we spoke in our, which means consciousness. So it here refers to that consciousness, and when it manifests itself with the help of Shakti, it manifests itself in the form of this entire human existence, which is what is being presented through the image of a wheel, which two images. The image of the wheel is in this verse, and the image of a flowing river. The point is that both of these images imply movement. And the moment consciousness and energy come together, and consciousness gets trapped in energy, then, because energy is constantly moving, so then movement starts. It's in the same way like if you have a mirror, the light present around the mirror, we are not talking about the movement of that light. We are talking about when that light gets reflected in the mirror and the mirror starts moving, then even the reflection in that mirror also starts moving with that. So, as a wheel with one valley. I hope, does everybody understand what a valley is? Valley is the outer rim of, if this is how a wheel approximately, not precisely, but that would be extremely painful for those those sticks standing out. Okay. So this would be the valley, the very foundation, because everything is based on this. The entire chariot or whatever is based on it. So that is like it is one. There is one center and one valley. So one center, at the center lies consciousness. But what is the one valley? It's energy. Again, the same entity that he spoke of earlier. Energy, Shakti, the potential from which everything arises, which is the foundation of everything that we spoke of when we were discussing the previous mantra. That Shakti, that is this one valley, one rim. The Tantra masters explain it as Kundalini. So this Ekanemi, this one valley, according to the Tantra interpreters, refers to Kundalini Shakti, present within the human body. So like the outer rim is the very base, the very substratum of the entire wheel, as well as the entire chariot, as well as everything that is loaded on the chariot. In the same way, energy is supporting everything. It is the foundational support of everything, the very substratum of everything that exists. So the one valley here being mentioned is that Shakti, is that potential. It has been called by so many different names, sometimes as the unmanifest, because it is the unmanifest state of everything that exists, the seed-like state of everything that exists. Sometimes it is referred to as the higher space in the Upanishads, the higher space in the sense from which even this perceivable physical space comes into existence. That's why it is everything comes out of existence from space, but space itself comes out of existence from this energy, from this Shakti, from this potential. And that's why it is sometimes also referred to as the higher space. Sometimes it is referred to as Maya, Maya, which means that Maya means illusion. Maya also means that which creates measurements. Ma, measurement. So that which means that which creates limitations. That which creates the illusion of the finite in what is in reality infinite. Even though energy is infinite, consciousness is infinite, and yet it creates that illusion of the finite. And that's why it is sometimes also referred to as Maya. Sometimes it is referred to as Prakriti, which means the supreme cause, nature, the highest nature of everything. Sometimes as Shakti, potential, and sometimes as Avyakta, non-tangible. So many different names have been used, and some of which will be used in this Upanishad itself. But all of them, they refer to the same foundational energy of everything. So this is now really the cornerstone of Sankhya philosophy, Purusha and Prakriti, consciousness and nature or energy, both of them. Then come the three tires. The Sanskrit word is vrita. Vrita means the three coverings. The very literal translation, vri means to cover. Tri means three, and vri means to cover. So the three coverings of this energy. And if we go back to the third verse, and those who were present when we were studying the third verse, there it is said, the energy which is veiled by its own three qualities, the three gunas. So the three gunas themselves, sattva, rajas, and tamas, which are seen as waves. So rajas, tamas, and sattva in between these three, as I have been explaining. So these, because they cover the valley, and that's why they are the three coverings, which usually English translators, they did not have tires made of rubber back then, but what the coverings made of iron. So that because if this is just made out of wood, after a while, to protect that wood, it was covered with iron. And so one has to look at that. And iron is, sometimes it's a little bit black, sometimes also a little bit red when it starts rotting, when it's not rotting, but rusting, yes, that's the word. When it starts rusting, and these are the two colors of rajas and tamas, black and red, these two colors. Okay. So these are the three aspects of Prakriti. The Tantra masters sometimes, depending if they come from an Ayurveda background, then they say also Vata, Pitta, Kapha, which are just in fact physical, on a physical level. They are Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. On a very physical level, it's Vata, the wind element, Pitta, the phlegm element, Pitta is bile element, and Kapha is the phlegm. How is it pronounced correctly? Phlegm. Okay, phlegm. The G is silent. That's what I thought. Phlegm. So wind and bile and phlegm. Phlegm. Okay. These three can be included. Some go as far in saying that this refers to Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna in between. These three. Commentators, all different possibilities depending on their respective traditions from which they come. Just to show you how throughout the centuries, different teachers have explained these mantras differently, slightly differently. But the Sankhya interpretation has, which is most likely the most ancient one, that is three gunas. Now comes the 16 ends. The 16 ends. So this has been described. Now the 16 ends are basically the covering of the navel. What covers the navel. And the navel, if the navel is consciousness, then what directly covers that navel is the physical body. And that's why, and this physical body is made of the 5 gross elements, so earth, water, wind, earth, water, fire, wind, space, these 5, plus the 5 senses of perception, the 5 senses of action, and 1, the mind. So with this, so you can describe this human covering of consciousness through these 16. Okay? So the 16 ends. The 16 end, in this case you have to see, this is the phalli, and then these are the spokes. The spokes will be described, and where the spokes end. So that covering of the navel, the navel would be in here, which is really at the center, going through to the other wheel. But this covering of the navel into which the spokes end, that consists of 16. The 5 elements and, the 5 elements and the 11 indriyas, as they are called. So you can say, to give you the Sanskrit words, the 5 bhuta, which means those who bring everything into existence, the 5 elements, and the 11 indriya. So 11 and 5 makes 16. When a person analyzes one's body, one of the most influential aspects of Sankhya is numbering. In fact, Sankhya means number. And what Kapila did, that he systematically sort of, by numbering all these concepts and giving them very specific numbers, that's why these numbers do not, in the understanding of this author, do not need any explanation. Because all of those who would reach the level of reading this Upanishad would have already years ago, would have known these numbers by studying the Sankhya system. So the 16, they refer to this physical body. Some of the, because these are literally the cover which envelopes the consciousness, the embodied consciousness, not the universal, omnipresent consciousness, but the consciousness which is embodied, which is totally limited by the body, which is present within the body. And this is like, the Upanishads sometimes also use the word kosha, sheath, like the sheath of like this is the sheath, the covering of this, like the sheath of a sword. And that's why the physical body is also sometimes referred to as the sheath of consciousness, in which consciousness resides. In Tantra, there are 16 marmasthanas, places of meditation. So according to commentators coming from the Tantra background, this refers to the 16. How is marma usually translated into English? Points. Yeah, subtle points within the physical body, which are used in, for example, marma therapy, which are used in Ayurveda, which are used in meditative practices to focus one's attention on different parts of the physical body. So, commentators coming from the Tantra background, they here with these 16 ends. In both cases, it's referring to the physical body. It's just how it refers to the physical body, that's the difference. In one case, it refers through the constituents of the physical body, and in the second case, it refers to actually the marma points of the physical body. Now, 50 spokes. That's a big number. Okay. So spokes are these. Spokes support. What do they support? They support the navel. Because they are the connection between the phalli and the navel. So they are in that sense, they are the support. And what lies at the center is this innocent suffering being, the embodied suffering being that lies at the center. And these support his or her, whatever you want to put it, however you want to put it, his or her suffering. That's how we should look at them. Okay. Now, what are they? First of all, the five viparyayas. What Patanjali calls the 5 kleshas, the 5 fundamental causes of suffering. Viparyaya means simply, the word viparyaya means false conception or misconception, misunderstanding. And so here what in the beginning of the 2nd chapter of the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali lists nescience or ignorance as the first one. The second one, ego. The third one, attachment. The fourth one, hatred. And the fifth one, fear. These 5. So the first one is ignorance, to forget one's true infinite nature and identify with the finite mind and body. So to forget oneself and identify oneself, to forget one's infinite nature and identify oneself with the finite, that is ignorance. Then, as a result of that identification, to consider oneself finite as well. To consider oneself finite as well, that is a finite understanding of oneself, which is what ego stands for, the second one. This also happens in, for example, when we are dreaming. Then first of all, the first thing is forgetting one's true nature as I'm lying in my bed. And then as a result of that forgetfulness, I identify with the dream body, which means the body that I see in my dreams. That much is ignorance. And then if something happens to that dream body, to identify it back on myself, which means if that dream body is under threat, then to feel that I am under threat, that is ego. That is Patanjali's definition of ego. So there is a very subtle difference between both, but the difference is there. In broader terms, we can say misidentification with this limited body. That's ego, the second one. And when limited identification comes, then comes possessiveness, attachment. That's the third one. Where there is attachment, there will be hatred. So that's the fourth one. And where there is attachment and hatred, inevitably fear will also be there. So these five, they are the first group out of these 50. We still have 45 to number. The next group are the 9 satisfactions that the masters speak about. Some of them are rooted in complete ignorance and laziness. Some of them are rooted in limited knowledge, but none of them is rooted in the highest understanding. That is why even they ultimately, all of them, lead to suffering, even though they are satisfactions. And satisfaction, santosha, satisfaction is considered as part of the yamas and niyamas, as part of niyamas, extremely beneficial on the path of yoga. But there can also be harmful satisfactions. If I'm satisfied with my yoga practice, then there will be no improvement. If I am satisfied with my ignorance, there will be no improvement. And we usually tend to be satisfied with things that require effort. And it is that kind of satisfaction. Sometimes at the end of the class, there are so many questions. People come to me. And then at the end, maybe 1 or 2 persons, they lose their patience. And they say, okay, we will ask you the next time. It's not that important. So they are satisfied without getting an answer. So those kinds of satisfactions have to be avoided. And these, they are 9 in number, according to the Sankhya philosophical systems. So we can put this number also down. So you have the Sanskrit. In the next printout, all of them will be listed. When we print out the next time, then make sure that everything is there. Okay. So the first 4 out of these 9 are the results of false teachings. And these false teachings actually do exist even today. As a child, when I was studying in Kailas Ashram, I remember several times monks used to come from different parts of India, and they would tell me, "Child, why all this effort that you are putting into your studies? Just sit down and meditate, and or just do japa, recitation of mantra, or just do your yoga practice. All this is not very important." Today I realize that was wrong, because on that time, that is what was the most important thing for me. When we are engaged in something, then no one should come and tell us that this is not important. On that level, that is the important thing. Then it sometimes creates confusion. Then, as we grow out of it, we on our own realize that it is no more important for my journey. And then we grow out of it. Then it becomes insignificant. But if it's like when you are crossing a river, somebody all the time teaches you that you have to, after you have reached the other side of the shore, you have to leave the boat, which is what many masters do, because once we have been long enough in a boat, we become so attached to that boat that we don't want to leave it. And that's why many masters then come and they tell us that you have to leave this boat, but also don't leave the boat too early. If you leave the boat too early, then you would have to swim across. The worst thing is that you can even get drowned. So sometimes when not false teachings, but when they are misunderstood, when teachings are misunderstood and they lead towards laziness, these are the types of the first four. So the first one is, I will not write all of them down, I will just explain them. The first one is satisfaction with one's nature as it is. I'm perfect the way I am. I don't need to do anything to improve myself. And in any case, even if I would acquire all this wisdom will arise in my intellect. The intellect is part of nature, and that's why all that knowledge is also just part of nature. Ultimately, nature is what keeps me in bondage, and ultimately, nature is what will lead me towards freedom. I'm totally bound to my nature. I cannot do anything to improve my nature, and that's why I'm just perfect as I am. And with time, when my nature decides, then I will become free from all this suffering. Let it be the work, the nature which has created me, let it be the work of this nature itself to also free me from my suffering. That is satisfaction with nature, the first type of satisfaction. Then the second type of satisfaction is satisfaction with external means. Sometimes people just take external means. For example, in places like Rishikesh, people come, they take the monastic robe, and they think now we have become monks, and that's it. Now we don't need to, we have left our family life, we have left everything, now we have come into an ashram, and that's it. The purpose of this monastic robe was to create time so that you can do actually the practices, so that you don't have to worry about your family, you don't have to worry about your duties. You can get away from everything and be in an ashram and totally dedicate yourself. That was the purpose of this robe. But if you just simply think that because now I've taken this robe, and the day you take that robe, everybody else starts respecting you, Swamiji, 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 respected Swamiji, honorable Swamiji. And then we think, now everything is perfect. So this is an example of external means. There can be many external means. Even asana practice, to be merely satisfied with one's asana practice, for example, and not going deeper within one's asana practice. that would be just being satisfied with its very superficial level, for example, just for a good fit body or a healthy body. That would be a satisfaction with external means. Or, for example, external religious tapestry, which is external means. Now I've started doing my pujas and everything, and now everything is perfect, everything is fine. Not that. So satisfaction with the different external means. Just after we have reached it, we are satisfied. Not using them to go deeper within oneself. That is the second type of satisfaction, which also has to be avoided. The example of monasticism was given by me because it was considered so important in ancient times. Look at the Buddha. When he pursued this journey, the first thing he did, he left his family. And this was done from extreme antiquity in India. And it was precisely that the Sankhya masters were attacking this if it is empty. If it is just a person leaves everything, goes into the forest, but then does not do deeper practices. Because running away from your family is easy. But someone who has run away from their family most likely will also run away when the difficult practices come. When there will be pain in the body after practicing asanas. When there will be extreme boredom while sitting down in meditation. Such a person will say, oh, I was better at home. At least I had someone to talk to. Here in the forest I have no one to talk to. Let me go back. So he will just keep on escaping from here to there, from there to here. So escapism is not a solution. So but satisfaction with this, oh no, I've left everything, that's it. And I saw this, even because I grew up in this monastic environment. Some of the monks that I met over the years, oh, do you know, I had such a big education, such a high education. I was an engineer, I was a lawyer, and I had such a big income, and I left everything. Then you carry all of that in your heart, even now. So they are just happy that they have left everything. They should be asked, what did you do after leaving all of that? That's what matters. Like Abhijata ji tells this story of Guruji, that for the first time when she could stand in Shirshasana for 20 minutes, she was very happy. And Guruji came and she told Guruji, today Guruji, I could stand in Shirshasana for 20 minutes. And Guruji said, but what did you do in those 20 minutes? I hope you just didn't wait for those 20 minutes to be over and come down. So that's the question. Even if our satisfaction is just there, that now I can be in my Shirshasana for 20 minutes, then this would be satisfaction with external means. What do we do in those 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, or 1 minute? What do we do there? That's what matters. So that is the satisfaction with external means only. Then some people are satisfied with time. When my time will come, all will be fine. It's just a matter of time. With time, everything, even today, science says that if you have enough time, then everything falls in place properly at some point, like this human body. So if you wait enough time, yeah, sort of. I think that's that's because yeah, I have to clarify it a little bit. Yeah, in the sense that okay, that's not the point here. But with time, everything, even a fruit, needs time to ripen. And masters tell, because when you are practicing very hard, masters still tell you have to be patient. Even if you put a lot of water into a tree, the fruit will ripen on its own time. So yes, the masters say this, But this doesn't mean that you should not do anything. You should not put water into it. This does not mean that you should not put खाद को क्या बोलेंगे अंग्रेजी में? Fertilizers. Yeah, fertilizers. That if manure is, I think the word, yes, manure. So if you don't put manure in it, if you don't put water in it, then maybe it won't happen. So you have to do that, but still you have to be patient, because this is not a machine where you just can bring change into about. It's a natural progress. The fruit ripens very naturally when its appropriate time comes. In the same way, like a bud, when its time comes, it blossoms into a flower. In the same way, through the practice of yoga, also a human being blossoms into a flower. It requires time. But if this teaching was meant for patience, that you have to be patient. But if somebody thinks that, if somebody misunderstands this teaching and says, I don't need to do anything, with time all will be fine, that would be a misunderstanding. And that's why that's called satisfaction with time, the third type of satisfaction. The fourth type of satisfaction is satisfaction with one's destiny. If everything is my destiny, and if everything is destined to be, then I cannot do anything. Then my bondage or freedom both are predestined, and when the time will come, when the destiny will be there, I will become free. Why should I make an effort? Nothing can be acquired without a good fortune. If my good fortune will be there, I will acquire freedom from ignorance. Why should I work for it? Why should I practice yoga for it? Look at the children of Madalasa, who had the good fortune of getting a mother like Madalasa, who gave them all this deeper wisdom of yoga while they were still in the cradle. And that's why they became free. Even as 5-6 years old children, they became free from their ignorance and became awakened simply because they had the good fortune of having such a wonderful mother. So let's wait for the life in which I also will have such a mother, will be fortunate to get such a mother like Patanjali's mother, Gonika, who gave him all the knowledge of yoga. So I will wait till then. Why should I work? So this is the fourth satisfaction with destiny. It also goes back to what we discussed when we were discussing the second mantra in great detail. It is related to that as well. So these are four. Okay? The first one, satisfaction with nature. The second one, satisfaction with external means. The third one, satisfaction with time. And the fourth one, satisfaction with one's destiny. They are satisfaction in the sense that if they lead to laziness, if they lead to a lack of effort, effortlessness, then they are satisfactions of a misguided student, a student who has misunderstood the teachings. So these four, but I told 9. So then this means that there are 5 more, and these 5 are they sound a little bit better than the previous ones, but they are still not rooted in an understanding of one's true nature, but in a different kind of laziness. And what is this different kind of laziness? It has to do with wealth, satisfaction with wealth. But what kind of satisfaction with wealth? 5 kinds of satisfaction with wealth. The first satisfaction is earning wealth is extremely painful. It requires tremendous effort. See how bosses behave towards their employees sometimes. The example that the commentators give is half moon. They hold him with a half moon. This is the half moon. Ardha Chandra, that's the Sanskrit expression. That today nobody does that. But I think we have very good labor laws in place. But still I think sometimes on an emotional level, on a deeper level, this indeed sometimes happens when you are working in big corporates. You are literally held on your neck because of that. So the point is that earning wealth is not easy. It requires tremendous effort. And therefore, instead of making all of that effort, let me just learn to be satisfied with whatever I have. And that's why this is the first type of satisfaction. Seems good, he will be a happy person, but it's still rooted in laziness. It's not rooted in understanding one's true nature, in which a person does not need anything. The need is there, but you don't want to make the effort to acquire it. So you seem satisfied because you don't want to make that effort. So many of those who leave the world might be suffering from this kind of satisfaction, simply because they don't want to make all the effort to acquiring money in the world. That's why they follow the path of renunciation. We as outsiders cannot judge, but we have to ask ourselves as practitioners of meditation, is my renunciation of this kind? Am I just renouncing everything because I feel that earning wealth is painful? Is it because of that I'm renouncing everything? Then my renunciation is still not the kind of renunciation that yoga really wants us to cultivate. It's renunciation, but not the kind of renunciation that yoga wants to. The second one is, this was the first one, which means the fifth one now, because 4 were earlier, and the first one of the second group of 5, the fifth one. The second one is satisfaction because protecting wealth is painful. Today you have banks, but even banks sometimes fail, and if you have the money at home, then you have to always be frightened of the thief. And revenue department, the tax department is always ready there to take away all your money, all your hard money, even if you just make a small mistake, the government. Thieves are there, what remains from the government. Thieves are there to take it away. And if you save it from there, then fire, flood, all these things, so many things. So protecting wealth also requires tremendous effort. It is so painful, and therefore, let me just be content the way I am. So this is also a kind of satisfaction, again rooted in laziness. Okay. Hoarding wealth, accumulating wealth, more and more. The more wealth you want to accumulate, the more difficult it becomes. If you look at the tax structure, the more you earn, the more it starts taking away from you. The more your life becomes like this, that you need more because you spend more. You have to spend more to maintain that level. So hoarding wealth is not easy. So much has to be done. A person has to work so hard first to acquire all this wealth. Then you have to fight so hard to protect it. And then you can in fact only hoard it. So hoarding itself is also very painful. Okay. When you want to enjoy it, it starts declining. So satisfaction because hoarding wealth is painful. And even if you have hoarded wealth, you have hoarded a little bit, someone else will have hoarded more. When you look at that person, you will suffer. That envy, that suffering of envy will also be there. So there are so many different ways of looking at it. Okay. Therefore, the easiest thing is let me learn to be content. good contentment. It will give peace to such a person. But still, it is rooted in laziness. So, yes, and it is santosha. It is santosha, but it's still the wrong type of santosha. The ultimate santosha that a yogi, still, why it is the wrong type? Because if you would remove that pain, the greed will come back. You are just suppressing that greed for that wealth because of the discomfort. The discomfort. So it's because of that discomfort that you are suppressing your greed and pressing santosha on yourself. It's not santosha which has come from within. And that is the deepest type of santosha, that when there is no need left from within, when a person has reached a level of awareness where there is simply no need of anything from within. Like the santosha of the Buddha. The Buddha had worked tremendously hard to become Buddha. So he was not practicing santosha because of these difficult things. He did not run away from these difficulties. This you can now very nicely relate to the problem also of how Bhagavad Gita presents Arjuna's renunciation. Because Arjuna's renunciation is rooted in these types of laziness. That's why Krishna is against that type of renunciation. Okay. Then the next one is satisfaction, because spending wealth is also painful. Even, yes. Yes, I think the point is that renunciation is fine. In the very beginning, the masters say, I think we leave it here. I will not explain the next ones, and I'll just, because this is a very important question that this misunderstanding doesn't creep in. In the very beginning, the basic principle of yoga is that unloading, renunciation is the means of growth on the path of yoga. That is very clear. That is very clear. No disagreement in that. But the point is that it should not be wrong renunciation. It should not be so. Even if you renounce and you don't work, as an individual, you have to ask yourself, why am I renouncing my duties? Am I renouncing my duties because they are uncomfortable? Or am I renouncing my duties because I'm ready to make a greater effort to achieve something higher, and that's why I'm renouncing them? This is a question that we have to ask ourselves. And so there is no problem with renunciation. The problem is with wrong renunciation. And as I said, so many renunciates, if they would look at themselves, when I talk to them, when I discuss with them, they would realize that their renunciation is of this kind. That they have simply run away from from what they found. Something uncomfortable happened in their job. They left their job and then come to Rishikesh. Or they had some problem with their wife and then run away from home and come to Rishikesh. That's not the kind of renunciation that will be ultimately beneficial. Because more discomforts than that, here in the ashram, you will follow sannyasis. With them when you will fight, at least she loves you. Here they won't love you. So here the fight will be worse. If you run away from there, then the fight here in the ashrams can be worse. So the solution is not that. The point is that. The point is the reason of renunciation valid or not? To identify that. So that's why, see, we are in the context now on meditation. And these these categories were created in the context of meditation so that a practitioner of meditation, when meditating on the stream of thoughts, can have these ideas in mind and see that if the idea of renunciation is coming up in my mind, is it because of these, or is it for another, for a greater purpose? And this is precisely what Krishna does to Arjuna. Arjuna sees something uncomfortable and says, I want to become a monk. I'm happier to become monk than doing my duty. Krishna says, if you want to do that, fine. But first, not because of running away from this duty. First of all, think about it, carefully analyze it, and then if you want, after you have thought about it, it's okay, it will be your decision. But first, clarity of mind. So after this clarity comes, then whether you want to renounce or not, that is your decision. That is not what the master is saying. Do you want to continue with your job, with your work, with your duties, or do you want to renounce them? That's your decision. That no yoga teacher will and should tell you to what to do. That will be your decision. But the work of a yoga teacher, of a meditation master, is only to make sure that you see these pitfalls, these false reasons of renunciation. After that, it is your decision. Still, if you want to renounce, most welcome. The doors of my ashram are open for you. That's what a teacher would say. But not false renunciation. Not simply because you just run away from something momentary. That's the point. So we have just listed 7 of them. 2 of them still remain, which we'll do the next time. They are very powerful meditative practices in the sense that when we do svadhyaya, self-study, self-analysis, these are the tests that we have to apply on ourselves and see where we are internally, in fact, standing. So that's the purpose of these. Okay. Still, if any questions, you can let me know. I'm here for a few more minutes, but let us conclude this session. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः Shantihi.